Hey, I'm Nick Von Brack, and this is the Record Podcast. Happy June 1st, everyone. Hope you're having a good day so far, seeing as it's only 7:47 here. So, good news and bad news for this week. Good news, I have a good guest. His name is Nick Woods, and he is the singer, guitarist, main songwriter of Direct Hit. They're a punk band out of Milwaukee, Chicago area. And they are awesome. If you haven't checked them out, you need to go and listen to them right now. They have a bunch of music all over. If you go to their website, directhitsucks.com, you get all their links there where you can find all their albums and all the good stuff. And they have a new album actually coming out in June 24th, and we talk about that. They just recently signed to Fat Records, and Fat is putting out their new album, Wasted Mind, in June, the end of June, and Nick let me check out the album ahead of time, and it's really good. It is a really solid album. We talk about all that. We talk about Direct Hits history, being a dad and touring on the road, signing to Fat, touring with NOFX, the keys, some of the keys and the reasons Direct Hits had success over the years, and a lot of reasons for some failures and hiccups on the way. It's a really good overall listen because we talk about Nick's past and other bands, and reasons for why they didn't work out and reasons for why this is working out, and talk a little bit about my history too. And it's just a good insight for anyone who is either in bands or interested in kind of the journey of going from just a band or a fun little project on the side to actual serious strategizing your band and what you want to do with it. And he has a lot of good focus on that. I don't have a ton of good insight on that, but he has a lot of good advice and good things for why they've had the success they have. But it's a really good listen, and he's super funny, so you got to find him online. He's also writing for different publications, so he's got a lot of good stuff that you can find him on. But go follow Direct Hit on Facebook, all the social media stuff. But they're a good follow. They're funny, and they put out some awesome music. And Nick has been kind enough to do a giveaway with us this week. So, as per usual, if you go on Twitter, Facebook, any kind of social media, do a post that promotes Direct Hit and the Record Podcast, and make sure to tag the Record Podcast. Tag them both. Tag Direct Hit and us. But so I can see it. Just do some kind of cool creative post. It doesn't matter what it is, just as long as I can find my way to seeing it. And this time next week, I'll announce a winner for a Direct Hit t-shirt, and you'll get a nice sweet little piece of merch just for promoting Direct Hit and the podcast. So I said there's good news and bad news. The bad news isn't really bad news. It's I made the amateur mistake of assuming my microphone was plugged in. If you listen to previous podcasts, I've talked about how goofy my setup is at home, and I didn't even think to check it. I thought it was all plugged in. The same color cable that my little mixer is the same cable my printer is. So I just looked at it, thought it was good, plugged it in, saw that there was levels being picked up, but the way that it's all plugged in, I can't hear myself. I have to just kind of check ahead of time to see if it's picking up, and I can only hear who I'm talking to, which is a mistake that is so easily remedied that it's nonsense. But I did this interview. It doesn't even sound that bad. It just sounds like kind of the old interviews that sound a little more thin. But so the next couple interviews are that way, since I knocked a few interviews out last week, all at the same setup. So apologies for that for those who enjoy the smooth tone that the SM7B bring. But the next few interviews are just straight Skype, so enjoy that, and apologies. But never mind all that shit. Here's my interview with Nick Woods.
Fuck you! Dirt pops! To the Burger King can tell that I'm fucked.
All right, cool. So wait, do you work from home?
I do work from home.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, are we recording right now?
We are.
Sorry, are we or are we not? Sorry, you
Yeah,
broke up for just a second.
yeah, we are.
We are. Oh, okay. Then I won't. I will gain from talking shit about my job then. But yes, I work. Yeah.
What is a day at home like then? Are you with the baby? Like what's the shakedown?
Um. Well, you have a daughter, right? Is it a
Yeah,
daughter or a son? I forget
daughter.
which.
Yep.
Daughter. Okay. So, we split time between daycare 3 days a week,
Hmm.
and she goes to her great aunt's house on Mondays, and she goes to my mom's house, her grandma's, on Fridays.
Okay.
Um, and so, like most people, well, like, not suppose like most people, I don't know if I should make that generalization, but we can't afford to pay for full-time daycare because daycare, I mean, when we sort of had the idea to have a kid, everybody told us that we weren't going to have any money and we weren't going to have social lives and we weren't going to sleep and all this other nonsense. And I was
Right.
really anxious about having a kid, and none of that shook out. I mean, you have a little bit less money, and you spend less time outside of your house, but you replace that with hanging out with your kid, which is awesome, you know?
Right.
So none of that really took us off guard, but fucking daycare, dude, is just out of fucking control.
Yeah.
It's a real blessing that I'm able to work from home because it means that usually when I wake up, Kate works at a hospital nearby. So she wakes up and takes her to her great aunt's on Mondays. And I just sit on my couch in my fucking underwear and work all day long on Mondays. And then I go and pick her up around 4 o'clock. And then, Tuesdays through Thursdays, usually the baby wakes up between 7 and 8. So I get with her and I hang out with her, and usually I have like a call or two in the morning for work. And so
Yeah.
she sits and hangs out and chews on her own feet for half an hour, 45 minutes. And then I take her to daycare and I work for about 5 hours at home. And then I go and I pick her up and then I bring her home, and she does the exact same thing for the last hour or two of my work day. So, and then that way we only have to pay for about half of what we would have had to pay for full-time daycare.
Sure.
Because I get to keep her at home for a little bit, and she splits time a little bit between her aunt and her grandma's, so that
Yeah.
helps out a lot. So that's usually my day. I mean, it gets one thing that kind of took me off guard about having a kid too is just how regimented your schedule becomes, and it's
Yeah.
like literally from the moment the kid's born, it's like your life is planned for you for like a good. I mean, it hasn't stopped for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like there's never been a moment where, like, at least a week or two in advance, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing at any given moment of any given day, because
Yeah.
the kid has to eat at a certain time and has to fall asleep at a certain time and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's a busy day every day. And when I'm on, I mean, and that's what it is like now that when I go out on tour, and I leave her behind with Kate, it's like the anxiety that you get from being on tour comes from the fact that like those moments when you know that you're supposed to be doing something with your kid, it's just
yeah.
like this weird like vibration that occurs where you know that you're supposed to be doing something, but you have nothing to do because you're in the back of a van or you're sitting in a green room or something like that.
Sure.
So it's a weird kind of new adjustment that you have to make, I think, being in a full-time band and traveling around and having a child back at home.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest one out of all of it.
It's funny how closely our lives are mirrored, because similarly our kid goes to daycare just a few days a week, and then between the moms, the grandmas, they watch her, and then my wife is a nurse at a hospital nearby, so it's all these funny I don't work at home, but it's a lot of like, it's funny how similarly all that stuff you just said is like exactly in line with what we're doing.
Yeah, man. It's I mean, I don't style actually. Really, the only, I mean, if I didn't have to have a job, that would be tight.
Sure.
I mean, that's really the only complaint that I have. You know, it's nice that I mean, I don't think that I have any more or less anxiety than I did before I had a kid. But I can tell you that I think it's nice just being able to have something to kind of center your life around.
Sure.
And I mean, be able to kind of regiment yourself and not have to make choices. Like, you don't have to think about what the best choice would be to spend your time.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to worry about that anymore, because the best choice that you can make is just whatever's best for your kid.
Yeah.
You know, And so when your schedule's set like that, you don't have to worry about whether you're making the right decision about where you're going or what you're doing, or um, I guess there's much less planning involved, which makes me feel a little bit better, at least I would say,
Yeah.
than it used to be. So
Yeah, a future podcast I want to get into is I want to either make it a bunch of mini interviews or one big one where I kind of talk to like the wives or the significant others of touring members or touring band members. And I think your wife is a prime, like that's a perfect interview because that's not only just someone who's chilling at home or doing her own thing. I mean, she's also got a kid to take care of. So that's like a whole other set of responsibilities and stresses and like you
yeah,
said,
sure.
and you're on the road stressing about it because your schedule is so regimented that you know like you got to be doing stuff and you're not doing it. So just
Oh
that,
my God, don't compare my stress level to my wife's when I'm going on
I'm
tour.
not
She,
comparing. I'm just saying it's an additional thing.
oh yeah, for sure. No, she's a fucking saint with this stuff, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, and that gives you like, you always hear sort of this cliched story of the single mom or something like
sure.
that before you have a kid, and then you have one and you realize just what a ridiculous proposition that is, raising a
Yeah,
kid on your own. And I mean, even me leaving I mean, we were just out on tour with NOFX for like 3 weeks, and I flew home on my off days, but being gone for a week at a time and leaving your wife at home with a baby is like, I mean, I don't know how it is that people sleep
no,
if it's just them in the house with a kid all the time. I
no.
don't know how it is that they don't go insane and burn their whole place down with the kid inside of it. Like it's wild to me.
You know,
So,
and I say this to my wife every now and then. I'm like, you know what? I don't condone violence. I don't condone child abuse. I'm just saying there's been nights where I've been on such little sleep where I can see the kind of mind frame people get into where something can happen. I'm not saying that
yeah,
I support it, but I'm just saying there's been nights where I'm like, holy shit, like I'm gonna fucking lose my mind and throw her out the
yeah,
window and like cut off all my hair. Like
yeah. Did you sheet of paper when you left the hospital that said you would not shake your child?
yeah, I think so.
Because they made us sign that piece of paper. I
Yeah.
don't know if we were an exception, but yeah, when we left the hospital, they had like a whole checklist. Like we had to like put initials next to this thing that said like, I understand that sometimes babies cry for no reason, and I understand how delicate a baby is, and all this other nonsense. And it was at the bottom. It says, under no circumstances will I shake my child, at the
Yeah.
bottom of it. But I mean, I've read that exact same line to people before, man. Like you hear about that, about people like shaking their kids
Yeah.
or like, and you think to yourself, like, what kind of inhuman monster fucking shakes a baby to death? And dude, when it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you've gotten up every 45 minutes since
Yeah.
11 o'clock because the kid, and it's not even like the screaming. Like if the kid is
No.
screaming, like that's one thing. Like that they're really upset about something. Like something's wrong. It's when you can just hear them just moaning at a
Yeah.
mid-level volume in the next room, and you just and it's happened regularly, and it's happened all night long, and
Yep.
all you want to do is get that kid to shut the fuck up and let you sleep for like an hour and a half. That's all you want.
Yeah,
So
man.
I say the same thing. I don't condone that kind of thing at all. I'm never going to do that kind of thing,
Right.
but I can understand how it is that it's happened
Yeah.
before. People going insane with children.
Yeah.
So
And the same sentiment like you said with being a single I just yeah, I cannot imagine being a single parent like that. Like even just like giving her a bath or something. I'm like, how do people do this? How do
oh
people
my God,
operate?
man. Yeah, dude, it's crazy that we have the same. Well, and maybe everybody that has kids is the same kind of thought
Yeah.
that's in the same mind. But yeah, giving a kid a bath, man. Like it's how do you do that with a 6 month old, or not a 6 month old, like a 3 month old that can't
Yeah.
sit up on it on
No.
her own?
No.
How do those kids not get drowned? Like how are they not all dead from drowning?
Exactly.
Every one of them. Yeah, I can't imagine it either. So
No.
I'm glad that I have a supportive partner
Absolutely.
who helps me out with that kind of stuff. I hope I do as good of a job as she does
Yeah.
with keeping her sane. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we could make this whole podcast about talking about our daughters and how they're driving us insane and slowly and surely. But we'll have to talk a little bit about your band. Then we can go back to talking about how we're gonna die early in our 50s because we have heart attacks or something. So yeah, I say we just. Oh, you might even be able to hear my daughter crying in the background.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
my
yeah.
mom's overwatched
You
while I
home
do
today, by
this,
the
so
way?
knocking
Oh,
some stuff
okay.
out. But yeah, so when I met you guys, it was actually like the very end or like tail end of Doctor Manhattan playing shows, and they had already played I think, a couple shows with you guys with a different drummer, and I think I had talked to them a little bit about you guys, and I was like, oh, these guys are sweet. And then at some point we got on a show with you, and it was a really sweet show. And then after that, I became a pretty big fan of you guys. But I don't know like your backstory or anything. So how does Direct Hit come to be?
Man, that's at this point we've almost been a band for 10 years, which is wild to me. So
you're like the Broke Downs. You're like an old
yeah, dude. And I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about I guess our history because we're such a different band than we were when we started.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not like the Broke Downs in that, because the Broke Downs have had like, not that we're not like the Broke Downs, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just the Broke Downs have had like the same lineup of guys forever, and they've had kind of the same sound and the same, they've been in the same kind of scene. I mean, I'm the only member of Direct Hit that's been around for, next year it'll be 10 years since 2007.
Okay.
And so when the band started, first of all, it was a reaction to the band that I was playing in at the time, which was kind of like this indie power pop kind of thing. Like I didn't really write any of the songs for it. There was another dude who was lead singer. Actually, his name's Archie Powell. He plays in Archie Powell and the Exports now, who are a bigger band down in Chicago.
Sure.
So I played in a band with him, and he was writing all the material for it. And I was working at a call center at the time, and so the call center worked where, like, you would take a call, and then depending on how many people were there and how many calls were coming in at a time, you would get a break in between calls. And those breaks were always like, if I was on a call for like 8 minutes, I'd have like a 3-minute break afterward. Or if I was on a call for like 30 seconds, I'd have like a 10-second break afterward. It was this weird, like, all those call centers are so fucking crazy. I could talk about those for hours too, about like the automation behind them and all that. Yeah. It was like 6 people that managed like 600 people because it was all computerized and stuff. So, but anyway, the way that I passed time in between calls when I couldn't read books was just by coming up with lines for songs.
Nice.
Because I was bored and I didn't have anything else to do. And so by nature of the fact that each of those breaks was so short, 30 seconds or a couple of minutes at most, I couldn't really focus long enough to be able to write like 3-minute, 4.5-minute songs like I was with my band at the time.
Yeah.
And so I came up with all these tunes that were like 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes long, something like that. That were more, I was listening to a lot of, I hadn't really listened to pop punk for a long time, but I was listening to more stuff like Dillinger 4 and the Ramones and the Thermals and bands like that were writing that kind of music. I just kind of returned to that. And so that was the kind of music that I was writing when I was on that job. And that kind of music didn't really fit with the band that I was playing in at the time. And so I just kind of threw a 3-piece lineup together just to be able to play them and maybe play a couple of shows. Mm-hmm. It was me and Jackson Fothergill, who's also known as Officer Bradford in Masked Intruder now. And my drummer in the band at the time, or my band at the time, whose name was Brian Peoples. And I mean, that group that I was playing in at the time, the Box Social, we were called. I think we might have played with Dr. Manhattan actually a long time ago.
That sounds familiar, man.
Back at the Red Line Cafe, we played with you guys.
Holy
and there was
shit.
Like nobody there. It was back when you guys were first starting too, I think, as a matter of fact.
I remember this.
Yeah, I think Adam had a shaved head at the time, if I remember right. It was like
That's a good memory.
It was back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so either way, that band was like this really big, serious project that we were really like going for it, like we really wanted to make a living playing music, and we weren't going to be like all these other fucking people that graduated school and got like white collar jobs and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so we were so serious about it that this other thing that I did, I told my girlfriend, soon to be fiance and now wife, at the time, that this wasn't going to be a big serious project. This was just going to be something that I did for fun. We weren't going to play very often. And it was just going to be like these short, dumb pop punk songs. And we were going to play maybe a couple shows, and that was going to be it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way that it started. And soon after the band started, the Box Social went on this big, long, like it was like a 9-week tour or something like that around the U.S. And the year after that, I ran out of money and got one of those white collar jobs that I said that I was never going to get because I was playing in that band because I ran out of cash.
Yeah.
And so soon after that, that band broke up. And I didn't really have anything else. You know, I had this other kind of side project band. And in the meantime, Brian went off and started playing in Archie Paul and the Exports with Archie.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson moved down to Chicago to go and hang out down there for a little while. And so it was just kind of me. And I found a new bass player, and I had like a series of drummers. We had two different dudes who played drums with us at that time.
Yeah.
One guy named Kyle, and another, I think we had somebody else. I forget who. I'm probably pissing somebody off by saying that. It doesn't matter. But we had, it was just kind of this in limbo kind of thing. Because my main band had broken up, and I had put all this cash and time and effort into it. You know, I was really, I wouldn't say that I was depressed. That's putting it like in a really severe terms. It wasn't like that, but I was sad that I didn't have a main band anymore, you know?
Yeah.
But I kind of had this fun little thing on the side, and I started putting a little bit more time into it. And I kicked the bass player out because I wasn't really getting along with him.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I met Danny, who plays drums for us now, right around 2009. And that's when things really started to roll. I mean, at that point, I was just recording like these little EPs with my friend Shane at his studio in his grandpa's basement. And I was just kind of, I recorded like one of them and put it on a CDR. But right after that one came out, Bandcamp started.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And that must have been like 2009 or 2010. And I fucking loved Bandcamp, like right from the start.
Yeah.
You know, the coolest part about that was that I knew I had email addresses for everybody that downloaded my stuff.
Right.
You know, and so it wasn't, I mean, I didn't have like thousands of people like downloading these dumb demos that I was putting up on the internet, you know. But you know, it was much easier for me to stay in contact with people that downloaded just the dumb tunes that I was putting up, you know.
Yeah.
And so every time I would put up, like I would go in, and my idea was that I was going to, and this is what I told Kate at the time. I told her that I was going to do one 4-song EP every 6 months for 5 EPs, and then after that I was going to pick the 10 best songs, and I was going to record a full length, and then the band was going to be over. Right.
It's pretty well thought out, though. Already seeing that far in advance, to be like, to have like that, I don't know, that foresight.
Right. Well, I mean, it wasn't really foresight or planning. It was just she knew that if I got, and which is what ended up happening, by the way, if I got too entrenched in it, it was going to like turn into this gigantic thing again, like the Box Social.
Okay.
And so it set kind of both of our minds at ease that I had a plan for, you know, what I wanted to accomplish with it and where I wanted to go. And so that was just kind of the way that I had planned on it working out. Now the thing is that because I had access to all these, well, not access, but because people had been downloading my stuff and giving me their email addresses as I was posting this stuff up, you know, I could post one and then send something out to, you know, like 50 people or however many had downloaded it and say, hey, I got a new thing that's going up. You should check it out.
Yeah.
And when I would do that, I would just put up, like, that was right around, I think Twitter started in like 2008. Was that right? So our bass player that I had just kicked out had started a Twitter account for the band. And so every time I would put something up, I'd just go on and post something and say, hey, we have a new thing up. Go check it out. And when I put up the third one, there was a girl named Lisa Gorelick who was living out in, I think it was Philly at the time. It might have been Brooklyn. I forget which. But she had this little upstart label called Kind of Like Records. And she noticed that I had put up the third EP. At that point, I was getting pretty good at just going in and banging out 4 songs in a weekend, you know?
Yeah.
And really knowing, like, I had a process down. Danny would come in, bang stuff out, and then I would come down and do everything myself. I do all the guitars, all the bass, all the vocals. I do it in like a weekend or something like that, because it was just way easier than having to teach other people parts
Right.
and having to argue over what it was. It was all me from a melodic standpoint. I didn't
Yeah.
want to have to fuck around with anybody else trying anything else out. It was just my kind of thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the third one actually I think sounds pretty good still, if you go back and listen to it. And that was really, I think, where the sound of the band kind of congealed, I would say, or came together. And so she sent me a note then, saying that she really liked the stuff and that I should keep in touch. And at the same time, there was this was around the time when people were doing those like free download kind of sites where they were just putting music up and they had a mailing list and they told people about new music, and that was that.
Yeah.
There was a label out in North Carolina that was doing that called Death to False Hope Records. And Death to False Hope actually went on a tear with a bunch of really, really good music on their site. There's a band from Fort Collins called Elway that we played with. They were called 10-4 Eleanor at the time, but they got their start there.
Okay.
The band Mixtapes got their start there. Band from Toronto called Brutal Youth got their start there. We got our start there. And combined with Lisa's record label, Death to False Hope, there was also a message board called the Pop Punk Board, that a lot of people, I don't know if you've ever heard of Insubordination Fest before, that happened out in Baltimore.
No.
But that entire crowd of people that would go to that festival, especially a guy named Christian Miglaracy, who played in a band called the Tattletales at the time. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I've never said it out loud before, even though he's a good friend of mine. Wow, that's wild. Anyway, that message board sort of got behind our sound. And there was another message board called Skockely's, which was actually, I think, a fan site for Streetlight Manifesto back in the day, that turned into like this. There was a thread there that had a shitload of like torrents and file sharing stuff.
Yeah.
Those people ended up got a hold of our stuff too. So it was really these like 4 sources that suddenly all of a sudden wanted to be involved with our band. Were really interested in hearing us.
Nice.
And that kind of was where stuff started to get bigger. I started hearing from strangers, first of all. Like, that had never happened before. Like, I'd never gotten an email from somebody that said, like, I heard of your band on the internet, and like, you've never met me before, but I think it's really good, and it's helped me through some stuff, and all that kind of cliche thing that you heard. And
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really take it seriously at first, until kind of like decided to put out a 7-inch with us and Mixtapes on it. And Mixtapes at the time were already way more popular than us. Like, that band was just blowing like through the roof. I think they ended up, they went out on tour with like Newfound Glory.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe they didn't go out on tour with No Found Glory, but they did. I mean, they did a bunch of really big tours, or I think Bayside was one of them. Like, they were playing really huge rooms, and we were just lucky enough to be on the B side of this split that we were with them. And soon after that, I kind of came to the end of my plan of releasing, 5 of these little EPs and then choosing the best ones. And so what we did to raise funds for that was just put each EP on a different side of a cassette. And then we put the cassettes out in this box, and the boxes sold out in like, I think we were selling them these like shitty little cassette boxes with like Xerox paper on the inside of them. And those boxes sold out in like, must have been like 3 days or 5 days or something like that. Nice. It was really quick. And so instantly, like, all of a sudden we had like $5,000 in our fucking bank account.
Nice.
And so it was like the combination of hearing from all these people all over the world who are finding our music on the internet. And then on top of it, all of a sudden we have a budget to record an album. Like, that had never happened to me before.
Yeah.
Everything that I'd done was on credit cards and like working shitty jobs and putting stuff together. And that was kind of when I told Kate, like, maybe this is a bigger thing than I thought it was, that I was going to be. And after that, it's just kind of gone from there in, fits and starts. We didn't do a really big tour until we always did like these short little tours because I always told Kate that she could come with and I wasn't going to leave her behind on tour again.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really do the first really big long tour we actually did. And this was another point where I realized that it wasn't just a little fun band anymore. When we got to we actually did our first, like I always used to say, excuse me, it's not really a tour unless it's like 3 weeks long.
Right.
Our first 3-week tour was over in Europe because one of those people that sent us a note on the internet was some guy in Belgium who really liked our band. And he said that we should come and tour Europe. And I said, you find me a fucking guy to book me a European tour and I'll do it, like sarcastically. And like the next day there was a dude named Casper who's booked a couple of tours for us over in Europe now. Who sent me a note, was like, yeah, I'll book you a tour over in Europe if you want to do it. And we were like, well, like, and I sent him a note back and I was like, yeah, man, just whenever you get that hooked up, send me dates. Like, it was like one of those deals. And 3 weeks later, he sent me a note and said, you have dates in these spots. If you want them, you can come and do it. And so after that 3-week tour, we went with, I don't think Brainless God was out at that point. It was just Dome Splitter. We went over and we toured Europe for 3 weeks and came back and recorded another album. And then we did a 5-week tour the summer after that. And it's kind of been on a roll since then. Brainless God, which was our second album, got on all kinds of top 10 lists the year that it came out. And now we have a record coming out on Fat, which is wild because that's a label that I've been following since I was like 15 years old. And yeah, I don't really know what else to tell in the story. What other details you need to get filled in. That's kind of where we are now, though. So it was all 100% an accident.
I was gonna say it sounds. I'm noticing a theme of like the whole band is like predicated upon this like, yeah, we'll see. It's not a big thing. Whatever, and everything just fell into place.
I've had that talk with a bunch of people before, man. Like, and we had a manager with the Box Social, who I don't really get along with and haven't spoken with in a long time. But when the band was breaking up and he knew that we had kind of tried to fire him at one point too. He had kind of a snarky line because he knew that he was going to be working with Archie in his new band, or at least for a little while. He told me on the way out, he's like, man, sometimes the less serious bands are the ones that work out, And that's just, I don't think that was the exact line, but that was to the effect of what he was telling me.
Yeah.
And man, that's the most sage advice that he's ever given me. And I've talked with people about that before, about why it is that the band that I didn't try very hard at was the one that got popular. And, we're kind of in this environment in music these days where everybody is constantly like yelling at their, like constantly just shouting at their friends and fans, like, fucking come to my show, fucking come to my show and buy my record. Do it now. Support my independent band. And like, no live music fan wants to have a band shout, like wants to be obligated to come to a show. I've made it a point to never tell anybody that paid attention to Direct Hit how to take my music or when to come, like, and we do, but I do it in all caps lock and tongue in cheek.
I was gonna say that so now you described your whole social media presence then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, that's just all a bunch of sarcastic shit making fun of that kind of culture, I don't know when that turning point came about, and I used to do it with my old band too, but I realized at some point that it was fucking ridiculous. Like, I didn't want to go to a show and be guilted into buying a CD, or buying a record or paying $10 to get in. I want people to come and see my band play because they want to hang out and have fun and listen to music that they enjoy.
Yeah.
I'll set up a party at my house and guilt you to come into that to make me feel validated. I'm not going to do that with my band. And I think that's a big element for why it is that people ended up enjoying what we were doing, we weren't trying too hard. And there's a lot of people that try really, really hard to get famous and make money off of music. And I'm over that point. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I don't have any hope that I'm ever going to get rich and famous. If it happens, that's tight as fuck. But I mean, I've got a mortgage and a kid and a wife, and I'm not going to fuck with any of that shit by, trying too hard with my dumb pop punk band that I play in my early 30s, So
I think the whole band, the band before Directed, the Box Social, I think that kind of set the stage for all this, because you like you said, you were very serious. You guys went on a, like 5 week tour, or did you say 9 week tour or something?
Yeah, it was
like
a 9 week tour.
Yeah,
Yep.
so like that was a band that was very, very serious. So it like almost pushed you to the exact opposite end, and
Yeah, and
it's just so funny that it worked out.
yeah, that's what I mean when I say that this band was a reaction to that one.
Yeah,
I wanted to do the complete opposite with this. I wanted it to be unserious and fun and like no give a shit kind of music.
yeah,
Have fun. I use that line a lot. I say, have fun, don't care.
yeah,
That's kind of the way that we wanted to treat this. And it's worked out really great for us.
yeah,
We're not making money hand over fist with it. I'm not. There's not 1,000 people coming to see me play at shows, but it's really fun and it's really validating to be able to go out and not have to pay to make records anymore, and to not have to pay to go on vacation for 10 days, and to be able to see all my friends that I've met all over the world. And it's been a great experience, regardless of how much cash I'm pulling in. So.
Well, and I think there's an interesting point in there, because a lot of what you're saying, like direct hit success is related to, is like not taking it seriously. And I think and some bands that works, but I feel like on the other end of the spectrum, for us, we try to do almost a very similar thing. And the reaction from people and labels was like, I don't know, I don't get it. So like, yeah. I think it's like when it works, it really works. And on the other end, it's like some people, I've had this conversation before, people were like, it's funny to me because the whole time we were in the band, we're like, we want to see bands that like, we love NOFX. We want to see bands that make us laugh and we have a good time, and it's not the same thing like you were saying, like support my band and this fucking stupid promo picture and all this stuff. Like we were totally against that. But like, because we were in that system and people who liked those bands liked us, like it was almost, it almost deterred people. Like, no, I want to go to a show and I want to watch a band, and then like it's a serious thing.
I think it's a time and place thing too, I mean, I wouldn't say our scene. Well, I guess I would say. Well, I would just say music in general, I suppose, changes so quickly of what people want and what they want to hear. And I mean, there have been times. I mean, there's been ups and downs over the course of my band's life. Where our message has resonated really well, and then there's been other times where it hasn't really gone as well. And I think you got to look at it in aggregate kind of a little bit. And I think by and large, bands that people can have fun watching are the ones that people are going to enjoy, at least for a long term, Yeah. I mean, just think about it. Like, if you're the kind of group that's barking at everybody to support your band and check out your MySpace page or whatever dumb channel people are looking at these days.
Yeah.
At a certain point, if that band doesn't blow up and succeed, suddenly those people realize that they're rooting for a losing team.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to pay attention to that anymore. Yeah. You don't want to see a bunch of sad dudes flailing around on stage. So
well put, flailing around on stage.
Yeah. So I mean, I think if we want to talk strategy, which is a really douchey way of describing a band that I don't take seriously.
Yeah.
I think a good strategy in the long term, at least, is to be a fun band rather than a dour, serious band.
Sure.
Have fun with what you're doing. People are going to pay attention to that a lot longer than some flavor of the month nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you notice a certain point in the band where, like you said, like the basically going against the whole generic standard, yelling at bands or yelling at people to come see your shows? Do you notice a point when like all of a sudden it just clicked and started working? You're yelling at people and saying "fuck you," get pumped, and like being super sarcastic, or did it just kind of like gradually happen? Like people, kind of like, because I think that's another part of the band. It's not only the music's good, but it's like NOFX. It's a good band that's also funny. So it's like there's two sides. I can go to a show, have fun, and it's funny, and then also online, I'm checking in with them, and it's not like, oh, here's our tour. It's like you're giving this whole long description of all this crazy shit, and I'm laughing, and now I want to like look more into the band. So it's like, did you notice a point in the band when that was like, oh, I can like work this in, or that was just always kind of the thing, like I'm not taking this seriously, so I'm just going to say what makes me laugh, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was always just trying to joke around on the internet.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, I can tell you exactly who I ripped off with my internet presence. It was a commenter on the AV Club called fucking Zodiac, I think is his name, or Zodiac fucker or something. Yeah. I forget what it is, but that was always his thing, was a dude that just came on and like typed in all caps and made fun of everybody else in the comments section. And I always thought that was really fucking hysterical on that site. And so I was like, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
That's what I told myself. And so I thought that was just a perfect distillation of what band voice was at the time, on the internet. It's just, and so I took that persona just to a new kind of level for the internet. And I always thought that I was kind of playing a character.
Yeah.
But I think the whole "fuck you, get pumped" thing is when it really clicked with people what I was doing,
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. Like, it doesn't really matter all that much on Facebook now because everybody likes everything and everybody has 100,000 friends. But back in the day, like, you could really gauge how well your jokes were landing on Facebook, because like 11 likes on Facebook was a big fucking deal at one point, like if you had 10 people that were liking the shit that you were posting, you knew that you were onto something,
right.
And so it was that was a really good way, I think, to be able to judge the efficacy of the character and how well our kind of persona was coming across. The whole "fuck you, get pumped" thing, I think, was just where it people started realizing, like, oh, this is really just like a joke. It's not just some fucking asshole on the internet being a dickhead,
Yeah.
And I mean, even the "fuck you, get pumped" thing was like a joke. Like, that wasn't even a strategic move. Like, I was, because when we were "fuck you, get pumped" came about on Direct Hit demo number 3. That was the first time that we did it. And that EP was in kind of a weird point in our band because I just kicked out our bass player. And so Danny at the time, like, wasn't real sure if we were going to be a band, and I wasn't real sure if we were going to be a band, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it to my 5 demo goal that I was going after, and so on that one, actually, I don't even think Danny played drums on that one. I flew in a dude for that one and just had him like that. That's basically a drum machine in the background on that recording. Like, that dude just came in and played a bunch of 4/4 beats, and like we kind of listened through the songs, and he added a couple of fills, and then I had Shane, my engineer at the time, just piece everything together, into exactly the way that I wanted it to be. And my brother had come by to visit just to kind of hang out while I was working on the stuff and joke around and shit. And he was like, "Yeah, you really don't seem like this is a serious," like, he was mentioning something about how I really didn't seem like I cared all that much about this recording or whatever. Because I didn't because I was freaked out about our bass player going, and I was pissed off that I was paying for this stuff and it wasn't happening. I said, just go into the fucking booth and say "fuck you, get pumped" into the microphone. That's going to be the intro to this thing. And he was like, and he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, just go in and just bark 'fuck you, get pumped' into that microphone, and that's the way that this demo was going to start." And that's what he did. And after that, I think that was really what caught Lisa off guard when it first started, when she decided that our band was worth listening to, that's the first thing that you hear on that tape. And then all of a sudden it's like the entire band and 800 guitars and me screaming in your face, like, all at the same time. And so that was kind of, and that was when I started pushing stuff on Twitter a little bit more and things like that. And, I think that was a pretty good introduction to our band for a lot of people. It instantly told them what we were all about there. And it was a total and 100% accident. Yeah. I think. A lot like how our band has existed.
I was just going to say, it just goes consistently with the rest of the band's story. Just all this, like, throwing shit against the wall and it just happens to work. And what's great is that it's not like nothing is out of your character. I mean, like, you're not doing things that you don't want to do. You're making jokes that you want to make, and then when they work, or writing songs you want to write. So it's pretty much the ideal situation. You can just be like just like throw it away, be like, "Ah, fuck it, see if this works," and people like, all right, sweet.
And you work in a creative field, right?
Yeah.
You like edit video or something like that for a living, right? Yeah. So people have. So I hope that you understand this sentiment that this knowledge that I'm about to lay at your feet. There's people ask me, especially on this last NOFX tour, like, there were a lot of people that I'd never met before asking me how we got signed to Fat Wreck and why it is that our band has achieved the tiny modicum of success that we have. And what I tell them, and I think this is something that Louis C.K. said actually too, when people were asking him about Louis, is that the key to creative success, I feel, is just to be creative all the time. Yeah. Just make a shitload of shit. because it's absolutely impossible to predict exactly what it is that somebody's going to want.
Sure.
You know, what a scene is going to want, because you need to produce something that's going to be popular 2 years from now, not something that's going to be popular like now.
Right.
You know,
That's
if
true.
you're doing what's popular now, by the time it's actually released, nobody's going to care about that bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
So in my sort of experience, the easiest way to get something produced that's going to be popular a few months from now is just by producing as much shit as humanly fucking possible and throwing it all against the wall at the same time.
Yeah.
And then some of that, if you produce enough stuff and you work hard enough, some of that shit is going to stick. It has to, if you produce enough of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of the way that we've always operated. Just like we've always been writing and we've always been playing shows. Even when we've felt like the shit that we're writing is shitty, we've still kept writing it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, even on like this last record that we did, like we wrote 12 songs for it or something like that, and then sent them to Mike Kennedy, our producer, and was like, here's our record. And he said, no, that's not your record. You should go and you should write another dozen songs. And like all of us went, that is like, it's so infuriating to hear somebody tell you that. Like, when you've worked that hard on a batch of something, and like I totally get it, like why it is that people get frustrated when they spend like a year crafting this 3-song EP, and they spend like $50,000 recording with some guy out in LA, and they fly in like drummers and like horn sections and all this. Well, like that's just not a sound strategy for success when it comes to creative stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
You have to write a shitload of shit, and you have to be writing it all the time, whether or not you feel creative. Like that's the mark of really successful creative people, is that they can be creative even when they don't feel like being creative. Yeah. They can still produce something. They can put their heads down and they can come up with a song, or they can come up with a movie or a story or something like that, you know? And I think over the last few years with this band, that's worked out. I mean, that's a lesson that I've learned really well, you know? And even now, like, we have this album of really awesome songs, but we also have, you know, 12 other ones that we have just sitting on the back burner that we can come back and work on a little bit later on.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs that we wrote for this new record, we thought were going to be fucking terrible. And then you bring them to a new person, or you bring them into a new setting, and you work on them for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden it's fucking great, you know?
Yeah.
Stuff that you think is really good all of a sudden is not that great because you've worked on other stuff that you didn't think was going to be all that awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the big lesson that I've kind of learned about. I mean, and I'm a writer for a living too, kind of as a creative professional. That's kind of the big lesson that I've learned about the actual work and success behind making stuff that people enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, you have no way of predicting what people are going to enjoy. So just make as much stuff as humanly possible, and if you make enough of it, you'll get lucky and somebody will enjoy something that you've made. So,
yeah. So I wanted to get into the writing too. So do you treat your music writing is the same as you do your, you know, writing for a job so you write for Noisy or Vice, or who do you write for?
Well, I write for Munchies, which is the food blog that Vice does. And I also work for a software company in Indiana. I write all of their like soul-sucking sales brochures and stuff like that. So,
and you treat them both the same. You approach both writing situations the same way.
That's exactly right, man. You know. And that's the thing, is that, you know, even though I'm writing for two separate audiences, you don't know exactly what that audience is going to want at any given time. So, I mean, I write a shitload of salesy marketing stuff, and I write a shitload of stories about food, and I write a shitload of songs. And, you know, the approach, I think, is relatively similar in a lot of ways, you know? You know, we've always kind of had a narrative bent to our music, so I'm still writing stories in whatever medium it is that I'm writing in. Some of it's more entertaining than other stuff, but it all kind of has value, and at the end of the day, I got to write a lot more than actually ends up getting published for it to be successful. Yeah. So that same process is kind of at work no matter where it is that I go, or no matter who I'm writing for.
Yeah. So. And with the new album, getting signed to Fat, all that, you know, all that business, was that an album you guys recorded, finished, and brought to Fat, or were they already kind of in play when the album was being worked out?
You know, I don't entirely know. There's, I mean, you've dealt with this before. There's a lot of bullshit that gets slung about in the music industry. The story that I've been told is that Fat Mike had heard Brainless God back in 2013, which came out on Red Scare.
Yep.
And he was already pretty into that album because it had gotten on so many lists and stuff like that. And so the label was aware that we existed. We actually I think we tried to get them to put out Brainless God a couple years back, but I think they had other stuff that was on their schedule and things like that. So it ended up not happening, and Red Scare ended up doing it. But this time around, our manager at the time told us, like, let's just get everything done, and then we'll just shop it around. We'll try and sell it.
Yeah. And
so that's kind of what we did. I mean, we did all the music. We had 3 music videos done. Like by the time the actual album was finished, because we used like rough mixes and stuff to be able to produce them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
We wrote, I think, 25 or 26 songs total. We picked the 11 best ones. And then we went into the studio with Mike and we recorded all of them before we had a label set up. So, but I mean, even you can say that we had it and then we shopped it on like a prayer or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Fat was aware of our band before then.
Yeah.
They knew that we were working on a new record. They knew, I mean, we had tried shopping our last one to them before. So this one, I even though we were completing it before knowing that we had a label ready to go with it, we had kind of an inkling that we might be able to work with them, even though we were talking to other labels and stuff like that along the way. So, yeah. So that's a really wishy-washy answer to your question.
That's perfect.
That's always the kind of way that it works out, you know.
That's true.
So, and who knows? I mean, maybe our manager at the time, I mean, I've been told that he was pushing it really hard, so I don't know, maybe they're just telling us to make us feel good that or something like that. I don't really know. This question will have to be heavily edited.
I edit nothing. All stays.
All right, cool.
Cool. So since the whole band is kind of on this, like, and it's not that you don't take it seriously, like you don't give a shit about it, but you're just taking it lightly. You're like, you're doing what you want to do, and you're keeping the sense of humor and the sentiment the way that you want to keep it, no matter, you know, what people think about it. And is there a reason specifically when you start thinking like about putting out the record on Fat, like this is a good fit, or is it because had the situation come to our way, we would have just been like, oh, we like NOFX, yeah, you can put out a record. Like we wouldn't have even thought about like the business side of it. We'd have been like, Fat Records is sweet, we love NOFX, that's all you need to tell us. Like, was there kind of a goal in mind, like, oh, like this album fits well in this late, like, I don't know,
no thought process whatsoever. Fat offered to put it out. I've been following that label since I was 15. It's a fucking dream come true to be able to put a record out on that label.
Okay, good. That was kind of the answer I was hoping for, but I wasn't sure.
No, I mean, that was, I mean, if our new album had been like me just fucking farting into a microphone and Fat had offered to put it out, even if there was a label called Farts Incorporated, like it wouldn't have made any fucking difference. Like, I mean, Fat like this is the line that I've been telling people, and the 100% truth is that Fat defined what punk rock meant to me in the suburbs when I was a kid. Yeah. You know, the first time I heard a punk record was Strung Out, and I heard that album, and I had absolutely no idea that music could sound that way.
Yeah.
Like absolutely no clue that it could be played that fast. And like having to like sit there and concentrate to be able to hear like the intricacies between the guitars and how fast the drums were, and like it just totally blew my mind. And so basically from like I would say 15 to 18, like that if somebody asked me what punk music was, I would tell them go and check out any band on Fat Records, and that's what punk is. Yeah, you know. And obviously there's differing opinions from that. But I mean, just to be able to say that my group is part of that foundation and that legacy is I'm so proud of that. Like, and I mean, I have no shame in saying that. You know, you can talk all the shit that you want about my label, and you're fucking wrong about that. I think that they've been one of the most influential forces in punk rock music for the last 25 years, and I think it's hard to fuck with that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you like the music that they put out or not.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of the fact that we've been able to be us for the last almost decade now and still manage to be a part of a label like that. You know, we haven't fucked with our sound. We haven't fucked with our attitude. You know, it's one of my one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of. I put a lot of work into it, regardless of how much fun it was along the way. And I'm really, really happy to be a part of that label. So, you know, if they had, I wouldn't have cared what kind of record we made or who else would have offered. You know, it would have been hard to top an offer from Fat for me. So,
yeah, and
I can't think of many other labels where I would have been as excited about that.
No,
So.
and even when I don't remember where I read it on either Punk News or Absolute Punk or one of those sites, but as soon as I saw, or maybe even when maybe you guys posted something on Facebook, but as soon as I saw it, I immediately texted the other guys and I was like, "Holy shit! Direct Hit just signed to Fat Records." And I think before that, I was like, "Holy shit! They're touring with NOFX." It was like I am fucking flipping out for these guys. Like I could not imagine. And
I mean, and that's really been, I think, the most validating part of it. You know, you're kind of in like this bubble when you're making music, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, you see people at your shows and stuff like that. And I mean, for the last year, we've had our heads down working on this album. And there's not many occasions where like you look up and realize like, holy shit, I'm in a fucking band that people care about, you know? Like there's so many people playing music in this day and age. And it's just, it's an extraordinary privilege. I feel like on those rare, the first time it happened was the first time that we played Fest and we were on stage and like, I don't think we had played a show in Florida before that. And we were playing at, this tiny little venue called 1982.
Oh yeah. Is that the video game bar?
Yeah.
Yeah. We played there.
Yeah. And so we were playing our Fest show there and like, usually whenever we played, there was like, you know, 15, 20 people or something like that in front of us and everyone would nod and then a couple people would buy a record and that was cool and that was fun, you know. But at that show, I mean, we looked up and all of a sudden, like, there was a line around the door and there were like 150 people who were all screaming the words to the song, going nuts. And that was a moment where I said, man, this is like way bigger than I thought it was going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
And when we announced, and I didn't have another moment like that until the day that we announced that we had signed to Fat. And I mean, it was one of those kind of times when you look up and you realize like how lucky you are to have something that people like that matters to people, you know? And, you know, I always make a big show of saying that our music isn't political and all this other kind of stuff. But there's a dude named Till that we toured with over in Europe last year, who told me like just by virtue of the fact that your band matters to people, your music is political. Being able to stand up on stage and have a platform and tell people something and they believe you when you say it, like that's not something that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And this Fat signing, I think, was sort of just the latest illustration of that to me.
Yeah.
It's really humbling and it's really awesome at the same time, and it doesn't happen all that often. You know, the Fest thing I think happened in like 2011. The signing happened in 2016. So, I mean, at this point, it's like it's a once every 5 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you look up and notice that people give a shit about you. And, you know, I hope in another 5 years I can look up and still feel as awesome as I do now about the work that my group's done.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not fucking Lady Gaga and I'm not Justin Timberlake and I'm not a massive pop star, but even having the little niche crowd of friends that we have that care about me and the music that I make, it's a really, really awesome thing. So
well, not yet. You aren't.
Yeah, right.
Could you imagine Could you imagine going in front of an arena full of people and yelling "fuck you"? Get pumped, all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll see. I think that I feel like that era is over sometimes, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna see many more of those people.
Yeah.
It's few and far between. I mean, why don't we do this little exercise? Like, can you name like 10 groups that can fill like an arena of like 40,000 people these days? No. Like the Rolling Stones can do it. They're still a band. They've been around for like 50 years. They've been doing it forever. You know, Metallica can do it. Yeah. Beyonce can do it. But I mean, there isn't like a scene of like arena rockers anymore. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
So, I mean, I'm just proud that 100 people come out and give a shit about what I'm doing from time to time. That rules. It's very validating. Very rewarding.
And I'm sure, like you said, you've gotten the onslaught of people asking questions about the whole process now that this all just recently happened. But being very similar, being a kid from the suburbs who just loved Fat Records and bought every Fat Records comp and, got blown away by Strung Out and Propaganda, all that shit, the same kind of experience. Like, how was meeting Fat Mike? Like, I read all the different articles and interviews, and, he's a dick, but he's funny and all this, but, like, being that same kind of position of, like, this has been a big part of your life, is that, like, how'd that all go down?
We didn't get to talk to Mike all that much on this last tour because they were so busy with the book signing stuff.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
The one really substantive conversation that I had with him was when we played out in LA, and we talked a little bit about how impossible it is to make a living playing music these days. And he said to me, and it was like I said, we didn't really get to talk all that much because everybody was so busy on that last trip. I think he was dealing with some personal stuff. You can see that he's in rehab now, hanging out. What he told me is that the label exists now to give a platform to people who really love punk rock. You can debate what punk means and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to get into a debate over what punk, but that kind of music, people that care about that kind of attitude and that sound,
Yeah.
And it's not for making money, and it's not for making a living anymore. The kind of stuff that we do, and he told me that's why it is that he signs the bands that he does nowadays. So I took that, even though we didn't get the whole party animal experience that I think a lot of people have told us about Mike.
Yeah.
It was still a rewarding one, at least, just to be able to hear that. And then plus him telling us, like, having Fat Mike tell you that he loves your new record is just unbelievable.
Well,
like,
sure.
To hear somebody that you respect that much say that. That's kind of what I got out of it. I didn't get the whole, like, party animal kind of experience or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was funny hearing about, like, his balls hanging out when he had, like, shorts on that were too short and shit like that. Like, being able to say that I've seen Fat Mike's balls is pretty tight. But that's
if only high school you would have known.
Yeah, and I have no idea. You sit there and you listen to him talk and stuff like that, but it's still kind of a starstruck moment when you realize that you're talking to somebody that's meant that much to so many people. I've got a picture in my phone of the last night of the trip. When he climbed off stage to go and shake hands with people, and just seeing, like, it's like watching Barack Obama at a fucking political rally or something like that. Just the throngs of people that come to him,
Yeah.
It's a wild thing just to be able to kind of stand next to that kind of punk rock celebrity, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
It hasn't really put a whole lot extra money in my paycheck. It hasn't really, I don't really know, like, how to react to the question of what kind of value it's provided me.
Yeah.
It's just really awesome to be able to hang out with somebody that you've watched from afar for so long and have him validate your existence. It's a cool thing, as shallow as that is.
Well, and some part of that has to be like, yeah, you can measure it in dollars, you can measure it in, future success and stuff, but a part of you, it's got to be like, if my high school self would see me now, he would fucking high five me and love this shit. Like,
hell yeah, dude. Yeah, exactly.
That's value that you can't measure.
Yeah, even though your parents won't high five you over it, yourself 15 years ago totally would, and so that's cool enough.
Yeah.
You've become somebody that you would have admired as a teenager.
There you go, and not everyone can say that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
And then you can, your daughter's gonna grow up, and you can be like, yeah, well, one time I toured with Fat Mike, and she's gonna be like, what's a Fat Mike? I'm like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, or she'll say, stop talking to me. That's what she'll say. So yeah, I am fully prepared for my daughter to hate me and every single thing that I do when it comes to this stuff. It's it is 100% a me thing. I set plenty of time aside to be admired by her and my family and stuff like that. This band is something that I wanted to do, and I don't make any sort of bones about that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it seems like you're set up in a pretty good way in terms of how you look at the band, the kind of attitude you take towards the work you put out, like the work ethic, like all of it is all in the right place and seems to be in line with, the band and the whole, like, ethos of the band. So I don't know. I admire it, man. I think it's like I said, as soon as I saw the news of all that stuff happening, I was super excited for you guys. I don't even know you guys all that well, but even just seeing that, I was like, fuck yeah. Like, this is a band that deserves all this success. So I was very excited for you guys.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
And I guess just like a question I was just thinking to kind of, like, we can go out on this, like, you've been touring for 10 or in bands for more than 10 years. You've been you've been touring for a long time too. Where do you
Yep.
see kind of like, because I remember even just a few years ago, like all anyone would say is bands can only make their living off touring. You have to tour, you have to be living on the road. And
Yep.
part of me thinks that's still a thing, but I start to see bands pulling back now where they like pick and choose, and it's like it's a little more strategic. Where like do you still, now that this is like, this is where you make your money or a lot of your money, and this is your, what you're serious about, do you kind of strategize that, or like look at like we need to be touring this much out of the year, or is it like, I guess, how do you look at touring these days?
I mean, I think touring is the best promotional tool that a band has, but it only works up to a certain point,
Yeah.
I mean, I've met plenty of groups now at this point who just toured their fucking asses off for years, like gone for like, 200 shows a year or something like that. Like Mike was telling me that the All American Rejects, when they were at their peak, like I think they went for like 212 days straight or something like that, with
Jesus.
like week-long breaks in between, or like at certain points or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you look at a band like Paris, for example, like it's just insane how much touring they do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of hype gets built up around bands who are constantly on tour, which is awesome. I've also met a lot of bands at this point who, I mean, burnout is the word that people use all the time, but I mean, you can get burned out going on tour for like 100 days and still derive more value from playing like an extra 50 shows or something like that with
Right.
pay and stuff like that. I think there comes a point though and I think that a lot of bands are realizing this, that when you tour so much that a person in a faraway place is not interested in going to see you play because they feel like they can go and just see you again in another 3 months when you come
Right.
back around on tour again.
Exactly.
I feel like that I feel like that's killed a lot of bands. Like for a long time, especially before, like the internet made like live videos basically ubiquitous of bands,
Mm-hmm.
like you had to go and see bands play live, so it was valuable for people to be able to go out for weeks and months at a time on tour.
Yeah.
In this day and age, I feel like there's something to be said for going and playing in a city once a year, and then everybody that's there who gives a shit about your band knows that they have to come and see you play on that date, because there's no guarantee that you're ever going to be back again.
Yeah.
Because a lot can happen in a year, or a lot can happen in 2 years. All that being said, when you're a developing group and you're only getting like 50 people to come out and see you play at a show, or even, I mean, less than that, 5 people coming out to see you play at a show. I mean, coming back and doing shows over and over again is fine, because then you're playing to a different audience every single time. But when like you're a mid-level punk band and the 150 people that come to see you play are the only 150 punks in that town that are going to come and see any punk band play, I mean, there's no reason to go and play that town over and over and over and over again if your reason for going to that place is to be able to build up your band.
Yeah.
If you're going to visit friends and hang out and have a good time, that's a totally different story. I mean, but then that's not a business strategy. That's like a vacation or a personal trip or something like that, which is just as cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, like we're constantly getting pushed to tour as much as we possibly can. Every band is getting pushed to tour as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
I still think there's a lot to be said for going out and doing that. I think that when you start doing it too much, and you start playing to the same audiences and seeing the same face over and over again, there's no reason to go and do the same thing over again.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing as like writing songs or something like that, Go out on a lot of tours, go out on a lot of different tours, go out for different lengths of tours, playing new places all the time, doing the same circuit over and over and over and over and over again for months on end isn't going to get you anywhere at a certain point.
Yeah.
So, but you have to do it. It's the best way to promote your group, is by going out and meeting people face first and hanging out and talking about the songs that you've written that they care about and all that kind of stuff. So, but there's a lot of cool new ways that you can promote your band too. We make videos all the time now. I do podcasts like this one.
Yeah.
I just make as much stuff as humanly possible all the time to make up for the fact that I can't be gone, 150, 200 days a year.
Yeah.
Because I got stuff to take care of here at home.
Yeah. Is there? And now I'm curious. Now that we just talked about touring, is there? Because we we went on a myriad of tours that, like, you know, some we thought were going to be great for us and didn't do anything, and some we thought were going to be shit and did great. And like, have there been any tours or shows that Direct Hit has played where you've just been like, I can imagine Direct Hit working almost with any kind of crowd, because it's at the end of the day, it's fun. Like, it's funny, it's fun. But I'm a little curious, like, has there been a tour or show that you guys have been on where like just people are not getting it, or like do not want any part of what you're given?
Oh, dude, we were just on tour with fucking NOFX. Are you kidding me? I got fucking like phlegm shot into my eye for the first time in my life when we were in Philly. You know, like there's plenty of people at shows all the time who don't fucking get it.
Yeah.
Who think that we're just a bunch of fucking assholes talking shit on stage. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the fact that there's like this exclusive club of people who actually get it and know what we're doing is kind of, I think, a reason why people care about us from time to time, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was, and according to what their crew told me, like, we didn't even get like the full brunt of the awfulness of their crowd, you know, from time to time. But I mean, I'm trying to think if there was one show in particular. I mean, we've played shows when there have been like 4 people sitting at the bar and they just don't want us to play.
Sure.
You know, that's happened before.
Yeah.
Where they're pissed off that there's live music at their bar that night. When we were on tour with Pears, we played in at the Nick in Birmingham, Alabama, and that's what happened. You know, there were five or six people who were really excited to see us play up front, and there were 4 very, very angry people sitting at the bar who were really pissed off that there was loud music going on that night.
Yeah.
You know, and vocally like booing and screaming and telling us to shut the fuck up in between songs, and you know, that happens all the time. It's just part of the territory of playing punk rock. So
do you, when that's happening, do you feed right into it, or do you ignore it, or are you just like throwing it right back at them? Like, I want to be at that show where Direct Hit is getting, yeah, that's what I mean. I feel like you guys would, like, that's like your bread and butter. Like, you'd be perfect for that kind of situation.
Oh yeah, we talk shit back all the time. I mean, it's much more difficult to do that in front of 1,000 people who fucking hate you as opposed to 4 people who fucking hate you. You know? And I mean, thankfully it's never gotten to the point where there's been like a physical altercation or something like that. I think we would handle it a lot worse if there were people like throwing bottles and shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's a good example. We did one show a long time ago in Milwaukee, and I mean, that was a perfect example of one of them where there was, I think there were a good like 250 or 300 people at that show. And they dug our first 2 songs, and then we got into the slower, poppier ones, and they were not. I got a full can of beer right to the forehead.
Oh, no.
That show, that was shitty. And in that case, then we don't talk shit to the crowd. Yeah. Then we just put our fucking heads down and we play and we don't talk. That's the way that we operate in those situations. And I mean, it was the same kind of thing on the NOFX tour. Like we gravitate sort of, you know, between these 2 different, I guess, poles of, where we'll play a song and then talk for 10 minutes in between the next 2 songs. If the crowd's feeling it, we can joke with people and feels like it's fun and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, we've had nights when we've played 45-minute sets with 18 or 19 songs in it because the crowd is pissed that we're on stage and we need to fill time and we need to not speak, because when we speak, that's when you give them an opening to throw a bottle or get pissed or something like that. So, and in those occasions, then we just put our fucking heads down and we play, and that's it, you know. Ramones, that shit.
See, I feel like in that moment, and something that our band would do, and I feel like this would be something your band would do, we would just like play the same song over and over. Just like, oh, you're really going to do that? Well, fuck you then. Like, we're going to give it right back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. We've done stuff like that before. Yeah. Where we just made noise and acted like morons. It's tough to do that though when there's 1,000 angry people in front of you. Though.
That's true.
They don't appreciate that.
Yeah, those NOFX shows must have been pretty big. So I imagine if you're getting stink eyes, you can't really just like hit an open chord and just stand there.
You guys have played in front of like thousands of people on like Warped Tour before and shit like that too, right? I mean, was there ever an occasion for you when you were in front of that many people when it's been like a tidal wave of anger before?
See, I think we had such a consistent like mixture of like a few people into it, a few people not knowing what's going on, and a few people who hated it almost at every show, that it kind of like just like static almost. Like,
yeah,
but
so you guys knew how to handle it because you were used to it.
Well,
right?
Almost, yeah. But it was never like a full crowd against us. It was just like, I think almost what's worse to me is like the no reaction, because I feel like, oh, I'd rather you hate me than just stand there and like give me nothing, because then I'm like, okay, I'm up here like doing I'm just fucking doing backflips trying to get anything out of you, and you are giving me absolutely nothing. But but the second you said that, that did make me think of when we did nine shows with Newfound Glory, and it was Newfound Glory, Senses Fail, and Receiving End of Sirens, and we were playing in Detroit at the Fillmore, I think it's called, this big beautiful theater, and it was the first time I had seen like not us almost get into a fight, but I saw Andrew kind of waving at somebody, and I saw two guys in the crowd pointing their fingers, yelling, "I'm gonna fucking kill you!" And Andrew's reaction that was to kind of just kind of keep waving at him and smiling, and it made him even more angry. And so the whole rest of the crowd was just kind of already looking at us like, "You're not Newfound Glory, get the fuck off the stage." So it was already a mix of like, we don't really care about this, and also these people are starting to hate you. So I was like, all right, well, just another fucking night on this tour. Okay, great.
Yeah. Is that how it happened a lot of the time when you were on that trip?
Yeah, that tour, because I mean, especially that tour. I mean, and I don't. I mean, you could probably speak to this too. I mean, a band like NOFX, a band like Newfound Glory, people don't really give a shit about seeing any of the other bands. Now, granted, that tour was a co-headliner, so maybe there's half and half of the crowd and whatever. But like, we're going on stage thinking like, oh, we're just gonna be fucking bonkers and funny, and like people love that, right? And they just looked at us like we came out, just all of us strapped with dildos on or something. Like they looked at us like, get the fuck off this stage. Like you're just wasting more time until I need to see the band that I paid to see.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of the big tours we were on. Any big tour that we were super excited about, aside from like a few shows here and there, like most of it was just kind of like, huh. I mean, just kind of like how a lot of people look at opening bands on tours. Like, get it done.
Was that kind of, did that play into your guys' decision to break up or anything like that? Did that kind of sour anything or something?
I think, I mean, it's certainly, after those shows, we'd be like, all right, well, because those big tours were essentially, we'd get them and we'd be like, oh my God, this is going to change our lives. And then we'd leave with like 10 more fans or something a show. And it's like, okay, so it's just kind of the same thing again. But I don't think it really played into the ending of the band. I think the ending of the band was more so like we put out 2 albums, we did an EP, and after the EP, I think it just started coming down to like, I got married and we were pregnant, and then we were starting to look at kind of like the mechanics of all that and like being gone. I think we just started thinking about all the shit that it would take to like get us out and do what we were going to do. And
started feeling like a job rather than a fun thing.
Exactly. And and I will say this, and the part I miss most about it absolutely is writing and recording. I love being in the studio and just creating shit. But I just think towards the end, and the way that I look at it still is like Andrew was kind of like the heart and soul of the band. Like even when any of us were thinking, I don't know about this anymore, like he was always like, we got to keep doing it. And then once I saw that kind of leave his eyes, like, I don't know, I was like, oh, okay, this is done. Like he's the one who's always kind of like, no matter what the rest of us thought, like he was like, we need to just get out there and do this. And once I saw the same kind of thing hit him, I was like, okay, like there's no sense in like just trying to push it if we're not all feeling it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and he's working on video projects for people now, right?
Yeah, he's done a couple videos for Meatwave, and he's I think he's still doing them. When I talked to Moose from the Brokedowns, he's like, "Oh, I want Andrew to do our video." So I told him like, "Go fucking do a Brokedowns video. Like, go keep doing videos." So I think he's churning stuff out still, but.
We tried to get him to play some keyboard stuff on the new Direct Hit record. It didn't really work out. That was okay.
That's a bummer.
One of the tunes, actually the one that's coming out like next week or something like that, sounds a lot like that Camping Ground tune that you guys did.
Awesome.
So we were trying to get him to play keyboards on that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like a fucking piece of shit. We've talked for now over an hour, and I haven't once mentioned the fact that the new album is great. And
oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you letting me get a listen to it. Like, I don't know, and I won't keep you much longer. You got work and shit to do, but I guess did you approach this album differently than the other ones, aside from the fact that each album you have a new mindset, like, because this album definitely feels bigger. It feels, and I don't want to discredit it at all by saying this. This is not an insult to me. I thought of it as like, this is like You're American Idiot. This is like a big album. Like it's very
People keep comparing it to fucking American Idiot, dude. I hate that record. And it sucks.
And I know. And I'm not saying that in the sense of quality or songwriting. I'm saying in the sense of like, you've gone from writing these songs to like, this feels like a whole album, like a whole one united piece production kind of thing. And those tend to be my favorite albums, are the ones where like this is all one big piece of art instead of, some, all kinds of good songs is good, but like when it feels like one big connected piece of art, like that's typically the stuff I glom onto more.
We tried to do that with Brainless God.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference on this one was that we collaborated on it a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, the band has just basically been like me.
Yeah,
like not to discredit, like, because Danny's been our drummer since like 2009.
Right.
Devin's been in the band since like 2011, I think, something like that. I mean, I would come to practice with like a song written, and then everybody would write parts around that song, and we'd like make minor changes to the arrangement or something like that, This time around, first of all, Devin has a song on this album, which hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
Steve has one song on this album, which hasn't happened before. And I would bring in sort of the skeleton of the song, and then instead of each of us just adding our own parts and that being it, we would all work on those separate parts together, like in the same room.
Yeah.
Especially having Steve around. I mean, Steve is, I think, sort of an underrepresented member of our band. But he's a really, really good songwriter and comes up with really cool parts and really cool production ideas. And so the fact that it wasn't just me trying to wrangle one big idea into 12 songs, but I had help from, two other dudes plus a dude who's played in like a multi-platinum selling rock band.
Yeah.
Like, I think all of that helped out a lot. I mean, especially with Brainless God, Mike last time with like 12 tunes and said, "This is the album." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, that's that." Yeah. And this time around, I came to Mike with 12 tunes and he said, "Well, there's 3 good songs on here. You should write a bunch more. Yeah. And we should come up with more of them." It was a much longer, more communal, involved process, you know? It's, we used to hear horror stories from bands that would like record for like major labels or bigger labels. And they would always say, like, we don't even know who played like what parts, like at the end of it.
Yeah.
And that was always like a really scary thing. That was always a really scary thing to me. And I mean, on this album, like it's the same kind of thing, but I don't feel all that bad about it,
Yeah.
Because it would be like there'd be 3 people sitting around a mixing board with guitars in their hands, and like somebody would play a part, and then the next guy would say, "Okay, that part's cool. What about if we did it this way, though?" And then they'd play it, and it would be a little bit different. And then the third person in the line would say, "Yeah, that's cool, but why don't we try doing this?" And then the second guy would say, "Yeah, do that, but I'm going to play this part behind it and see how that sounds."
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, you don't really know who's played half of the shit on it. You just know that, like, you didn't play the drums because you're not a drummer.
Yeah.
But Steve also plays guitar. I played, 1 or 2 little tiny things on bass. Some of us played little keyboardy things. Somebody set stuff up at their like. We recorded some stuff at my house. Really the only. And I guess this sounds like I'm being egotistical, but I'm really not. Really, the only 2 things on the record that that were played by a certain person were Danny playing drums and me singing.
Yeah.
And Devin doing harmonies.
Yeah.
So those are really the 3. Steve's voice doesn't show up on the album at all. Danny played, Devin did all the harmonies, but all the guitar stuff and the bass and the keyboards was kind of like a group of people all working together, you know. And that's kind of why what I attribute like the bigness and the complexity, I guess, on this one. And like it sounds a lot more produced than our last record, which also sounded more produced than the record before that. And I don't think it's that there's more production. I just think there was a lot more people working on it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people that gave a shit, which is great.
I don't want to fall into the slew of people who have compared this album to American Idiot, because that's not an insult. This is, to me, like I said, it just it feels like okay, here are these good albums before, but this is different. Like it feels like just a big step in a good direction of, like you said, just more production, more people involved in it, more like honed in thought. It just feels like it feels in line with Direct Hit, but a separate thing. Like, okay, now, and aside from being signed to Fat, it just feels like this is like a fucking big album. And no matter what that means with sales and all that silly shit, like it just feels like a big accomplishment. So that's all I was trying to say. Not that this is your fucking American Idiot that actual people, lots of people don't like. This is like a big album, it feels like.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. Yeah. I'm glad that you really like it. I hope other people do too.
I think they will, man. And I'm excited for it all to come out. When does it come out?
June 24th.
Okay.
That's when it comes out.
And you guys,
and there's already a couple of tunes released from it. We've got videos for a few of them up on ye old internet and YouTube.
Yeah.
So just check them out there.
And you've got some shows too to come out that are coming up.
Yeah, we have album release shows in Milwaukee, Madison, and Chicago. Madison one is on June 24th. Milwaukee one is on the 25th. Chicago one is on the 1st at the Majestic Theater, the Metal Grill, and Double Door, respectively. And then we go back out on tour out east with PQ and Problem Daughter.
I was wondering how that was pronounced.
Sorry, I say that sarcastically. PQ is a really good band. They were just out on tour with Pup. I don't know if you listen to Pup at all, but they were out on that trip. So
nice.
It's gonna be a great time. Come hang out. So.
And one final thing to end on, seeing as this whole band, and again, is it predicated on "fuck you, get pumped"? Like what could you at this point even? What could even happen with this band that will like be? I mean, like of all the cool shit that's happened, like what are you even looking forward to? Just like keeping this going, or is there like another?
I've never been to Japan. I've never been to Australia. I want to go to both of them. That's what I want to do.
Oh, yeah.
So there's always this high platitude thing where I hope someday I can quit my day job. I don't hold out any hope for that.
Yeah.
I am just looking forward to being able to see new places and meet new people that I wouldn't be able to without the group that I play in. That's been the coolest part so far. I hope we get to keep doing that. Nice,
man. Well, good. That's a good sentiment to end on. Very not sarcastic, very genuine. I'm very unlike you.
Thanks, man. I do exist as a human being.
Not to me. Not to me.
I'm not just a screaming brain on the internet.
You're just a series of letters and caps locks to me. That's all you are.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, good, man. Thanks for taking some time out today. It was good to dive into all that shit. And now I can feel like I actually know more about your band aside from the one time I played with you and the songs I've heard. So it was good.
Sure. Thanks, man. Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Good luck with everything, man. Good luck with all that. I'm excited for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
Fuck you! Get pumped!
Of this car for half an hour, and I'm wondering if any of this is real. Trouble is, I ate a pound of psychedelic mushrooms. Now I'm trying to decide if I should feel weird about the fact that both my friends who went and drove me to the Burger King can tell that I'm fucked up because the alligator face is leering at me from the front seat at that look of frightened deer and headlights locked. Listen, calm down, that bitter taste of drug, and no, you won't drown. I'm spit so cool it's swallow. We'll be downtown now in just a couple minutes. We don't have to talk until you're fine. So now I'm sitting on the curb, amazed by traffic, all the cars and rockets bolted to the roofs and reptile men driving, wonder if the lights that spin atop these ambulances always looked as cool as they have been. Everyone can tell me calm down, and bitter taste for stairs, and no, you won't drown. I'm spit so cool and swallow, take a breath, sit tight for just a single minute. We can talk again, live and get lost, and we'll sail as high as we wanna go. None of you can tell us no, or tell us that we'll fail, 'cause we're too far gone to care, and time goes way too slow. Let's pick up the pace and go. Double time this beat and will. No one rests until we're there. Well, I guess we should worry a bit, 'cause they'll lock us up if we can't learn to call it. We're having a party instead. Who cares if it's only inside of our heads? We got mutants and angels and demons and rockets and killers, obnoxious. Fuck you, man, I got this. Let's stay on this trip, tell the world that don't know anything. Glad you're here to hang out. So now sail as high as we wanna go. None of you can tell us no, or tell us that we'll fail, 'cause we're too far gone to care, and time moves way too slow. Let's pick up the pace and go.